All right, everyone. Hello, so good to see you all. Welcome to the Fall Working Title event. So good to have all of you here. So I'm Dr. Jade Case. I'm working with Dr. Chris Williams in the back, who's handling the tech. And tonight we have 5 amazing readers. So we have Sylvie Cavros, Camilla Doherty, Jeremy Thompson, Professor Erica Wiest, and Grace Zander. So before we begin though, I would like to just take a moment to read the UWGB land acknowledgement. So we at the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay acknowledge the First Nations people who are the original inhabitants of the region. The Ho-Chunk Nation and the Menominee Nation are the original First People of Wisconsin, and both nations have ancient historical and spiritual connections to the land that our institution now resides upon. Today, Wisconsin is home to 12 First Nations communities, including the United Nation of Wisconsin, Forest County Potawatomi, Ojibwe Nation communities, Stockbridge Munsee Band of the Mohicans, and the Brothertown Indian Nation. We acknowledge the First Nations people of Wisconsin. So tonight we're going to be, as always, featuring our readers in alphabetical order. They have about 10 to 15 minutes to share their work. I will introduce each one of them as they read for you. And then at the end, we'll have about 20 minutes for Q&A. So if you have any burning questions that you would like to ask our readers, I'm sure they would love to talk with you about their work and their process. Thanks so much. So great to have you all. All right, so we're going to start off with Sylvie Cavros. Sylvie Cavros is a sophomore at UWGB who is going for her degree in English with an emphasis in creative writing. Her favorite genres are sci-fi, fantasy, and romance. She often spends her time gaming, reading, writing, or in classes and clubs with her friends. She's also the graphic design coordinator for the English Honors Society here on campus. Please welcome Sylvie.
Thank you. Check what? Thank you, Professor Case. Well read. So I am going to be reading the prologue to Wings of War. 1 click to target, going radio silent. I radio to my comrades aboard the mothership. While they may be safe inside its hull, all I have to protect me from the void of space is an armored wingsuit, the thrusters attached to my back, my piloting skill, and of course, my standard issue blaster and monofilament blades. I continue to approach the asteroid base from the rear, carefully staying out of the way of the slapped-on thrusters and the massive cannons protruding from the inside. As I get within range of the asteroid base's comm jammer, I hear a short burst of static, and then nothing. I'm flying solo now. I reach my targeted entry point, an exhaust vent reserved for if the primary vent gets jammed up. Even sitting outside the base, I can clearly identify my target, a cannon bigger than all the others. Its barrel is far wider and protrudes more than every other cannon. If the general's projections are correct, it will level an entire colony with one shell by shaking the tectonic plate it rests on with such violent force that the entire city will collapse. Tens of thousands dead with a single pull of the trigger. This is why I must destroy it and take down this base wholesale. Leaving my wings of war near the exit, I make my way through the secondary exhaust system, quickly arriving near the asteroid's core, where the cannon and generator lie. Taking stock of my surroundings through the vents, I see a new pair of guards approach and relieve the old ones of their post. I wait for the old guards to move on before I brutally kick the vent. It flies through the air and strikes the first soldier square in the side of his head. Following the grate, I pounce atop the second soldier and crush his skull. I watch his tin can of a helmet crumple around his head as his brains leak through the cracks. The last dose of mutagen must have really paid off, because I barely feel it in my knuckles even after such a brutal kill. Unfortunately, the sound of the grate clattering to the floor alerted the nearby guards, who fled to raise the alarm. Great. Now they'd surely be attempting to finalize the cannon before I could stop them. I pull up the map of the asteroid and launch myself down the fastest route to the tectonic cannon. I curve around corners, dash around long hallways, and fly down stairwells. As I arrive outside the room housing the cannon, I'm met by a squad of enemy soldiers. The second the door opens, I hear at least 10 blasters charge, and as I leap to my left into a nearby alcove, a barrage of bolts flies down the hallway and strikes the opposite end. I guess it's time to take the messy approach, I think to myself as I extend the claws in my gauntlets and leap to the wall opposite the alcove. My claw is holding me fast to the wall. The enemy doesn't respond fast enough, and I launch myself directly into the crowd. I dig my knee into the first unlucky soldier, crushing his ribcage as he lets out a dying wheeze. The next few soldiers attempt to fall back, but are caught up in a whirlwind of blades as I perform a lethal spin with my claws at full extension. The monofilament blades rend through flesh, bone, and armor alike. The few soldiers left attempt to run, but find no luck. caught between myself and the cold, locked door. I sheath my claws and draw the sword on my back. Its long, sleek blade lent a lethal red gleam by the alarms. Come on, boys, I'll give you one shot. Beat me in honorable combat and you'll earn your life. One of them seems to consider my offer, lowering his rifle and beginning to reach for the saber on his hip. Another, considerably dumber soldier lets fly a blaster bolt. I easily deflect it with my sword and slice him from head to crotch, dividing him evenly in two, before kicking his left side as he pitifully falls to the ground. So, are you going to be smart, or are you going to be dead? They all drop their rifles and draw their sabers before organizing themselves into a delta formation. The first one lunges at me, taking a wide sweep towards my head. I parry his saber and kick his ankle, his lack of balance, his downfall. He hits the ground beside me, and a second soldier to his right applies a more calculated method. He keeps his guard up and slowly approaches, trying to read me. He then feints slowly and attempts to strike at my midsection. While a clever approach, it is quite elementary. As he feints towards my legs, I leap toward him, sword still in defensive position, and then strike with lethal grace, blocking his blade and slicing his throat in one fluid motion. By this time, the first soldier has gotten up and is well pissed off. He and the third soldier collectively charge towards me. Unfortunately, they are uncoordinated and stupid. The first one swings wildly, attempting to make his strikes painful and powerful. He winds up, and I don't even need to turn in his direction to pierce his heart with my sword. I don't even bother to pull it from his chest. I simply pull to the side and watch as the monofilament blade glides clean through what's left of the first soldier, and then clean through the second, parting him at the midsection. As all three of their lifeless bodies litter the floor, I hack the nearby console to unlock the cannon room's door. The engineers are working frantically, tightening bolts, checking specs, but as I walk through the door, they scatter, like roaches, like rats. Their lives are inconsequential to me. This cannon, the mission, is all that matters. I give it a rapid volumetric scan with a module in the shoulder of my suit and find the weak points in the cannon. I carefully attach the implosion charges I was given for this mission to each point and set the fuses. If any of you engineers are still in this room, I'd start running. This asteroid is going to be gravel in about 2 minutes. I shout to nobody in particular. I quickly find my way back out of the base where my wings of war await me, glinting in the starlight. I leap from the vent into the vacuum of space, and the wing-like thrusters follow, attaching to my back and propelling me to my ship, where I watch the asteroid base implode before heading home. Mission success. As I return to the ship, my captain and crew are waiting for me. How'd it go? Captain Kreider inquires. How'd you fucking think it went, genius? Didn't you see it blow the fuck up? I respond. I mean beyond the obvious, genius, he retorts. I don't know, this one looked more polished, more complete, better thought out. I don't know how to put it exactly, but this one was better than the ones I've seen before. Could have done some serious damage if they had managed to get a shot off with it. Then I'm glad we blew it up, he says with a grimace. Meet in my quarters once you're out of your mission clothes. No rush. I simply nod in response as I step out of the wingsuit and head back to my quarters to refresh myself. About an hour later, I knock on the door of my captain's quarters. He quietly opens the door and lets me in before I finish knocking. You were, he interrupts me with a shushing sound. That bad, huh? I ask, sitting down at his desk, waiting for him to do the same. As he sits across from me, his voice is hushed and concerned. What do you mean, better? Like they're getting smarter? It would appear that way. They're clones. They don't get smarter. It's called clone rot for a reason, he mutters incredulously. Well, somehow this cannon got an upgrade. Either they got smarter or they've made an alliance. Either way, we have to report this to the general. This is so far above my pay grade, I cut myself off before I say something stupid. Get the general on comm. Let him know. I'll be in my quarters. Hours later, during our free time, I'm watching a movie with Vinny and AJ, the gunnery crew. We're about 3/4 of the way through the movie when the captain calls all three of us into his office. We've been reassigned. Special mission, Captain begins. Turns out intel gathered during the mission was good. The Corval have allied with the Lucretians. One of them is a genetic engineer particularly skilled at clone enhancement, gene therapy, and the design of cybernetics. The room is quiet enough to hear a pin drop. The various sounds of our ship muffled, but not completely silenced by the captain's attempt to soundproof his office. Not only are the clones getting smarter, they're getting stronger and faster, which is why our first assignment is to sabotage their cloning equipment. After all, they can't make clones if they don't have the equipment to do so. Does anyone have any questions? AJ butts in. Sir, what kind of cybernetics are we talking about here? Artificial limbs? Enhancements? Full-on weaponry? Well, We're not exactly sure just yet, so it's best to plan for the worst. If you see a clone, either get rid of it or make yourself scarce before it has the chance to get rid of you. AJ nods, and a brief silence hangs in the room before the captain dismisses us back to our movie, even though none of us will be able to focus on it now.
Thanks, Sylvia, that was awesome. All right, actually, does the mic seem a little fuzzy to you? That one?
I'm pretty sure it's that's going off right now.
Okay. Here, do you want to trade me? All right, we'll see. It seems same to me. All right. Camilla. Camilla Doherty is a senior double majoring in English, creative writing, and writing and applied arts. She works as a writing tutor in the Learning Center and is the social media manager for the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. She's currently the publicity director for the Teaching Press and Sheep's Head Review, as well as co-editor in poetry for Sheep's Head. After she graduates this December, she hopes to begin grad school in fall 2026 to pursue an MA in English. Yay, give it up for Camilla.
Thank you, Dr. Case. So I have a short story and 2 short poems I'm going to read today. Short story is one that I've been working on for a while. It's a bit of sci-fi, so it's not something I usually write in, but I think the message is pretty important, so I just have to share today. This is Swan Song. We were made aware of their existence when our long-range scanners picked up their signals. Their radio waves were almost overlooked, faint and degraded. They blended into the vast chaotic sounds of the universe. But if you refined the signal's input, redirected our course, and listened closely, you could hear them. Rhythmic sounds and melodious noises flooded our ship's speakers. My crew was only interested in finding the signal source. I, however, was fascinated by the fact that deep within another galaxy, nestled inside its own solar system, life forms were calling out into the void surrounding them, saying, "We are here, we exist." At least they did. For a short time in the endless eyes of the universe. Now they are stardust and rubble, floating aimlessly, being pulled into the sun to burn as if they were never there at all. The source of this radio wave was a small blue planet, third from its sun in an expansive solar system. We called it Terra 042. The closer we got to its atmosphere, the stronger and clearer the sounds became. I was obsessed at this point. The planet's dominant species seemed to have discovered and tinkered these signals, and through long and careful research, I was able to decipher some of their languages and learn that the pulsing and metrical sounds I'd become infatuated by were called songs. My crew still did not share my enthusiasm. They were focused on conducting research into the ecological status of Terra 042 and the dominant species' effect on it. Others monitored the growth of the primary species, both in numbers and in technological advancements. They had made it to the stars, but in relation to the rest of the universe, they were infants. We were here to test them, to determine if they would someday be ready to join us. More importantly, if they would become a threat if left unchecked to roam the stars. I did not care for that kind of research, though. I only wanted to learn more about their songs. There were almost too many. I spent all my time at my station, glued to the speaker, taking notes and recording each melody that came through. I wanted more than anything to land on Terra 042 and immerse myself in their sounds, to hear the songs they don't transmit, and to live amongst them for a time. But I knew that was forbidden. We must never let the planet know we are here. We stayed cloaked, just out of reach from their satellites, and we observed. For 60 rotations around their sun, we watched. In that time, the reports for Terra 042 were grim. The dominant species was growing exponentially. They were poisoning their environment, destroying each other over resources and ideals, and polluting their atmosphere with more and more satellites. They were quickly destroying themselves, and as each rotation went by, my concern for them grew, knowing if they continued like this, we would be the ones to finish them off. I wondered if they would act differently, if they could view themselves from where we were. Would they see the insignificance of their problems? Could it prevent their termination? The temptation to interfere had never been stronger. When the order to terminate Terra 042 came through, I tried to protest. I argued that despite the evidence against them, the creatures inhabiting that planet had more to offer than the destruction and pollution they left in their wake. Their songs and their art could be their salvation, but their fate was already determined by a force they didn't know existed. We were threatened by their destructive ambition, fearing they would pollute the stars the way they did their own home. Given their nature, the value they placed on purpose and emotion, it was decreed that they would not get a warning. There would be no doomsday countdown to signal their execution. Terra 042 would be there 1 second and Space Dust the next. But I did not agree with this. In the last 60 rotations, I didn't simply observe them, I listened, and I believe they deserved one last song. When the others on the ship were distracted, I went to the main power station and disabled our cloak. No one seemed to notice for a while, at least long enough for me to broadcast a message to every radio wave Terra 042 emitted in their many languages. Soon, every member of that dominant species would know their time is limited. The others finally noticed something was wrong when the sensors alerted us of incoming projectiles. They were attacking us, but we knew our shields would hold. Not even their nuclear missiles they fired made a dent. My crew watched them panic, their existence cut short and their minds comprehending the end. Some tried to escape, their rockets shooting off the planet towards the unknown, believing it'd be better than termination. But we destroyed those as they broke through the atmosphere, as if we were containing a virus. Part of me felt disappointed in their retaliation, that maybe my crew was right. The species was not redeemable. But as their last bomb hit our shield, all our activity seemed to freeze on the surface. Their ships stopped in the open waters, the wars and battles were abandoned, the borders that made up their countries didn't matter anymore. Their initial reaction was now understandable. They are a species that survives, and when faced with something they can't beat, their first instinct is to fight. But now, knowing the end is near, they congregate to face the end together. It took us a few of their days to power a weapon, and in that time, the dominant species of Terra 042 was showing positive promise for the first time in 60 rotations. But even I accepted that they reached this point too late. With the weapon charged and aimed at their planet, I watched the red beam of destruction cast their sky into a sea of scarlet. It would take a while for the weapon to fully destroy the planet, to make its way into the core and superheat the magma inside for it to explode. But as we watched their final moments, our sensors and cameras were picking up activity. Based on our research, we expected that their final moments would be filled with panic, as they are not able to comprehend nothingness. It was hypothesized that they would beg us and plead with us to stop. They should have been falling to their knees, begging to their gods to save them. The concept of the void swallowing them, their existence being snuffed out, should have frightened them beyond measure. Instead, the speakers were picking up songs. Once I recognized the noise, I turned up the sound, and our ship was once again filled with their music. Music poured from every dwelling. Out-of-tune instruments were played for the first time in years. They moved with the rhythms and drank intoxicating substances. Some sang for the first time in front of a crowd. Others sat quietly with an old record or radio and listened as they waited. We expected the end to devastate them. We expected them to mourn themselves, not celebrate. We expected them to bargain for their existence and sob when we denied it. But they did not sob. They sang. Thank you. I have 2 short poems as well. This one is called In His Image. I will not worship on my knees for an afterlife I'm not guaranteed. I do not worship with submission to a figure that demands it. Is that love, I ask every week, to be crushed under the gaze of a father who never listens, to have his favor lined with conditions? Or is it something else, something that feels like I'm being cut open by the knife held by shame? Do the crows circle my secrets, my entrails of lies and sins, laid bare for all to read, my autopsy of transgressions? Do they peck at the ruined reverence I could never give him? Does the wind, the waters, the earth command a piece of me the way he does? She does not whittle me down into splinters. She nurtures my wounds and stitches me up. She forgives me for the way I am, without order or decrees. And still, when I see the fawn on the side of the road, laying in pieces in its asphalt grave, the mother staring with doe eyes at its corpse, a prayer to him escapes my lips, unwillingly and compulsive. And my last and final poem is called Spoiled. Spoiled, like the fruit left uneaten in the bowl, collecting flies and welcoming mold spores into its over-ripened cores. Spoiled like the milk, curdled and aged, left abandoned in its expired carton. Surely someone will clean it up. Surely someone will smell the acrid scent and stop what they're doing to take care of the stench. Someone will notice the putrid odor and find the source before it becomes unbearable. It will not fix itself. The fruit will not ripen again, the milk shall not be fresh. The flies will not relinquish the juices of the untouched fruit, and the milk will never be poured. They will sit and wait in their filth. They will not fix themselves. Until then, they will fester, like a grudge or a burden, a wound, like the truth no one mentions. It's better to rot than be forgotten.
Thanks, Camilla. That was awesome. All right, up next we have Jeremy Thompson. Jeremy Thompson is a writing applied arts major with an emphasis in publishing and editing. He's a building manager at the University Union and president of UWGB's chapter of Sigma Tau Delta. His aspiration is to become a copy editor down in Georgia after college. Please welcome Jeremy.
Thank you, Dr. Case. Okay, wow, I was expecting to speak into a little more. It does sound fuzzy. That's fine. I started a new project this summer, and there's two lovely folks sitting in the crowd over there who helped me refine it so that I can show it to you tonight. So I'll go ahead and get started. This is the first chapter of a novel I'm working on. Here we go. There were once people who strode the world with souls made of gold, as if gold were as common as bark on trees. But the veins of gold grow deep in the earth, and those who hoard it tell the rest that they can't afford to spare any, even if it can save a life. How very selfish. The shades, the souls of Zaxos' parents are made of iron. His father, Soter, died a while ago, but his mother, Thesis, only just gave into a cough that had been plaguing her since winter. There were several nights when Zaxos had been kept awake by his mother's hacking and wheezing. Every time he would offer his mother water or something to eat, anything to save the illness, but she'd brush him off and say, "Save your strength, boy. The drachma buys medicine, and the crop buys drachma." "Mater," he'd always reply, "there's nothing to farm in the wintertime, and the crop stores only feed us until early spring. Let me bring you comfort in your illness." Thesis never had enough strength to protest further, so she'd always end up with a vessel of water beside her bed. This routine would play out every night until the middle of spring. Thanatos managed to purchase Thesis enough time for Zaxos to get the fields tilled before letting Hades reap his harvest. Now, Zaxos lays his mother's remains down on her bed that he cleaned off for her rites. Despite his family never managing to make friends, let alone keep any, he left the front door open for anyone who wanted to come and pay their respects. But no one will come, and he knows that. Zaxos lights an altar at the foot of his mother's bed and kneels before it. The image of the dread king of the dead stares lazy-eyed at Zaxos, its form haphazardly carved out of wood only a day ago for Thesis' rites. The young man glows into its face and sighs, placing a single gold coin at the statue's feet. Long is your arm that reaches to claim the dead. Long is your memory that recounts the misgivings and deeds of the living. King of the dead, brother of Zeus, please bid my mater safe travels into your palm. He then rises and stares past the altar into his mother's empty face. Her cheeks are soft, and her freckles form a little cloud scattered across her nose, akin to those of Zaxos. Like a ghost guiding his feet, he moves to her bedside, waiting hopelessly for the rise and fall of her chest. Tears strain for release at the corners of his eyes, but he refuses to let them go. He has to be the one to guide his mother to the next world. He hadn't been lost like this since Soter's death. His father lay out on rough wolf furs. Zaxos stood at the right hand of the creaky old bed, and his mother was at the other side, performing the rites on a faded green rug. They took turns saying a few things to honor Soter, but Zaxos couldn't conjure the words, nor could he focus on Thesis' mournings. He bore into his father's face. The curls of his father's unkempt hair fell with the dust around his cheeks and his neck. "Zaxos," his mother said, "would you like to say anything?" A long silence dragged out. "What do we need to do next?" he replied. Thesis sighed, but reached to the nightstand to anoint Soter in the sacred oils. For Thesis' rites, Zaxos does the same. He follows the ghost of his mother's movements. Beads of oil pool on her knees, arms, chest, neck, and face. His tears pool at his feet before he's able to move on. After he's done anointing Thesis, Zaxos steps outside for the first time in the past few hours. The west wind expires a dry breath over the farm, making the grass and reeds sigh a soulless song. The sun chases the wind's origin, limping to the horizon and casting growing shadows along the field. The crop yield hasn't been the same since Soter suffered his accident. Zaxos used to tend to the bees, and his father would work the land obsessively, as if planting the crop were the same as eating it. Once the honey was collected, Zaxos would plow the fields alongside Soter until Lady Night rose. But since Soter sliced his ankle with his scythe and succumbed to his infection, Zaxos and Thesis have been grieving. The farm was struggling, despite the considerable effort Zaxos put into it. He worked and worked, yet locusts and drought came. He turned to Demeter. Desperation built her a shrine under the gazebo at the edge of the property. On his knees, he'd offer what little wheat and honey he could and sit in prayer, day in and day out. If he wasn't on the field, Zaxos was at the altar. Come on, boy, Thesis said to him one day as he whispered words of prayer. You've worked hard enough, and it's time you meet some like-minded folks. So she took her son on her daily routine. They walked 2 miles to the temple of Athena and Larissa. Oddly enough, though, he felt more connected to Olympus in the grand temple, where he served his community, than at his tiny altar where he served the gods. It's like Athena was standing by his side, hand on his shoulder. It was the most alive he'd felt since the spring prior. But now, Zaxos stands back up, tilting his head to the clouds. A soft breeze whistles upward and chills the trail of tears on his face. With one big, ugly snort, he clears a blockage in his nose. He resolves to finish Thesis's anointment, and then he'll allow himself a trip to the temple. So he returns and takes his mother's favorite wreath and crowns her in it. Zaxos' remaining coin is the offering that sits at Hades' altar, only for the god of the underworld to borrow and hold, as Zaxos places it in his mother's mouth. The ghost of winter manifests itself as a cold breeze on the spring night. Zaxos shivers as he toils, lifting dirt from the ground so that he can lower his mother into a resting spot next to her husband. The farmhouse hangs over him at the top of the hill behind an empty, barren field. Mater, please tell Pater that I'm very sorry for not saying anything to him, he says to her, admiring how the moon's light makes her brown face look silver. The tree he works under murmurs words that send pins of tears prickling at his cheeks. I don't know what I'm going to do without you. You'd have wanted me to figure it out. Scrubbing his mouth, he returns the earth to where it belongs. Dirt sticks under his nails and his hair and his sandals. As the sun wheels back up the eastern sky after climbing the mountains and trees, Zaxos walks nearly crippled from the ache in his back. His arms and legs are about ready to give out, but he doesn't care. He hadn't slept in 2 days, so what's a few aches? He marches up the steps of the temple. Once inside, he stumbles like a zombie past all the murmuring priestesses and temple goers. Pillars of white marble line the room. Voices bounces effortlessly through the space as a savory olive perfume licking Zaxos' nose. Copper braziers hang from each wall with the precise purpose of protecting the tapestries from a rogue ember, while also providing the most stability. Athena's priestesses come around occasionally to stoke the flames while pretending like they're not avoiding Zaxos. He collapses at the goddess's feet, her statue, the crown recipient of all the praises, glory, and offerings. There's something about this place. It's like she's right here, forced to remain inside the image of her carved by man, so imperfect and unlike her. You quite all right, boy? A deep voice says from behind him. A man with a stocky chin, poorly defined jawline, and thinning brown hair. Most people around Greece have brown eyes. People with blue eyes, like this stranger, only come around once in a while. His eyes are akin to the colorless voids of gray that Zaxos and his mother share. The morning boy blinks and strains his unused voice to say, I'm fine. Who are you? Hey, come on. He reaches down and offers his smooth hand. Stand up then. Act with some decorum in the house of Athena. Cautiously, Zaxos grabs his hand and rises. I'm sorry. Something shifts in the face of the old man, a kindred recognition. Don't fret. Lady Athena is a good goddess to go to when your days are long and you need to clear your head. Indeed, he murmurs in response, passing a glance up to the stone face of Athena. He then gazes blankly across the marble floor to the exit of the building, where many people enter to leave their morning offerings. The chatter swirling around is hollow. He feels hollow. The man's hand comes to rest on Zaxos' shoulder, temporarily snapping him out of his sleepless grief. You're as restless as the cult of Dionysus. Perhaps you're looking for a better intellectual guidance. What do you mean? He lazily replies. Athena is well known, but she's not the only god with smarts in her family. Are you doing anything today, young man? I'd like to show you something that might be worth your while. I'm not so sure about you. Akmon's eyes wrinkle with a smile. I don't blame you for being wary. I can assure you that I have no tricks. May Zeus himself strike me down if my intentions are in bad faith. The way the man holds himself is uncanny. He seemed to drift like a plank of wood sitting on the surface of the ocean, or a flag in the breeze. Something about the hint of grapes on his breath put Zaxos at ease. What do you want to show me? You'd have to see it to believe me, boy. Please. What do you have to lose in humoring an old man? My life. He strokes his graying beard and then laughs. Fine then, have it your way. You may continue to sit around in a temple you're clearly unwelcome in, see where that gets you. Or you can take a stab at something bigger than yourself. Then Akmon turns on his heels and walks away, his sandals clicking as he goes. Zaxos watches. He doesn't trust Ekman, not one bit. But Ekman is right. He could continue to sulk and then return to his dying farm and dead parents, or he could take a chance, if only for an afternoon. Maybe he'll get stabbed, maybe his afternoon will be wasted, or maybe he'll stumble upon something that can change everything. Wait, he calls, against his better judgment. How long will this take? Ekman shoots him a sly smile. They walk roadlessly through the sleepy town, men shipped in and out of their homes, following their routine like automatons. Smiths pound their steel and blow away dust with lethargy. It isn't until they start trudging up a hill just outside the city that Ekman speaks. This part of the wilderness used to be a bustling part of Larissa. Even Perseus was said to have lived here. Nice theory, old man, but where are the houses? The agora, the ruins thereof, he interrogates, as the trees and seldom tread path they waltz over suggest that Ekman's words are just myth. Buried. The skepticism appears almost immediately on Zaxos' face. I know. Hard to believe. I wouldn't drag you out here just to peddle some wives' tale. I have evidence. Wind rustles through the leaves, expressing the perfume of the grassy hill. The wind also exposes a thin swarm of bees hovering around some orchids, as Pullman breaks from their knees and tickles Zaxos' lip. He faces the wild animals with admiration, and like a mind reader, Ekman walks towards them. Where are you going? Zaxos asks. He waves his hand, like a cloud following a breeze in the way he walks, saying, the evidence I have is just this way, to an opening in the brush. The curve of the trees seem to form an arc at Ekman's very command. The low brush is tucked away out of the sun. The animals are sluggish, only bothering to escape Zaxos and Ekman when they get within a short bow's range. The humidity is oppressive in this expanse of the forest. Reprieve is only afforded to Zaxos when Ekman instructs him to set foot on a patch of moss, and it gives way immediately. The slow farmer crashes down into a dark chasm with a short scream. The force of the fall thuds through his chest. He turns back up and says, Ekman! He gasps, searching for the form of the old man above him. You bastard! Easy now, boy. I assure you I'm acting in good faith. The old man's voice streams down in a bubbling flow, letting the sloppy sounds echo off the wall. Then he drops straight down after Zaxos, landing on his feet with the grace of a cat. I mean no disrespect when I say this. He steadies himself back onto his feet, looking at him up and down. But you're too old to be throwing yourself around like this. How are your aged bones not broken from that fall? Worry not about my form and more about that one. He lifts his crooked finger. Zaxos' tired mind accepts the digression and follows the direction the old man points. That's when he notices precisely where he is. It's the interior of some sort of temple, much like Athena's, but wider. The offerings of fruit and wine form piles of grotesque rot in the corners, filling the very temple with a stench of death and maggots. The ground is cracked up, large shards rising at jagged peaks, broken apart by roots searching for reprieve or water seeping below. Clouds of flies punctuate the destitution and shroud the darkness in another layer of concealment. As they nip at Zaxos' flesh, he makes out an obscure shape at the far back. A man of stone, as tall as a maple and a face as sweet as honey, stands with a spear in one hand and a crouching lion under the other. Scores along the man's cheeks and chin suggest the sculptor wanted to depict stubble. His arms are swollen, carved into muscle, his chest a cabinet of oak, and his legs are veins of ores rooting in the ground. The flakes of paint from the man imply only a few years of age, which, of course, conflicts with the temple's burial, suggesting the ruins are millions of years old. And while the physical features are damning enough, the gray paint pooled in his eyes, the black lace and the chiseled fibers of his hairs, and something about the blue and purple lick of lightning across his face speaks to Zaxos. It points down and fishes the words, "That's me," right out of his mouth. The stillness of the air breathes silence throughout the space. The busts of Olympians buried in the dirt exhale. Cracks along the walls and ceilings bulge, threatening to give way, but only following through with letting streams of dirt trickle down. That's correct, Ekman says. This is your legacy, my friend, and I think it's time you reawakened it.
Thanks, Jeremy. That's awesome. All right, up next we have Professor Wiest. So Erica Wiest is an associate teaching professor in applied writing and English at the Sheboygan campus. We're so glad to have her here in person. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks to everyone who's here to listen, and it's awesome to be here with these wonderful readers as well. And thanks to everyone who put this together and organized it. So I'm going to read a little bit from a short story and then a few poems as well. This is called, I'm gonna start with this story. The prompt that I was responding to is just that it had to take place in a small town in the 1980s and it had to include magic. So Janelle was stocking the shelves at Healthy Harvest, a part-time job she had picked up during high school. As she loaded a shelf with the small bags of flour that she had also filled and weighed, she tried to ignore the pain behind her right shoulder blade that pinched with each movement. She had recently said goodbye to the last one of her siblings to move away, waved as the moving truck headed west. Janelle assumed the pain would ease as the truck and the stress that came with it vanished down the highway. Instead, she woke up to that same sharp pain every morning. Awareness of it landed on her consciousness first, followed closely by the thought, "Get me out of here." Yet she stayed. The simple store, fragrant with carob chips that were stocked near the checkout, was empty as it often was, except for the owner, Pat, who was deeply studying a cookbook. Janelle heard the bell signal a customer, and she glanced over to see a tall, thin man who used a cane stride through the door directly to Pat. Janelle tried to overhear their conversation as she slowly unpacked more sacks of various grains and flours, but they kept their voices low. Pat leaned in close to him, and her eyes were tender and almost teary, but it wasn't long before they both broke into laughter. A pamphlet or a piece of paper changed hands, and then he walked out with the same sense of purpose as he had entered. Something about the man intrigued Janelle. Maybe it was the sense of peace she felt when she heard him and Pat laughing together. Maybe it was the way the pressure in her chest eased a little in his presence, or at least it tugged like it wanted to unravel. After the back pain had moved in for a longer stay, a gradual pressure had built around her rib cage, like her chest and upper back were enclosed in armor, leaving her with shallow breathing and the pain behind her shoulder blade like a very sharp knife was lodged there. Janelle walked to Pat's area and pulled the large box of paper bags from under the counter. "I haven't seen him come in before." "Is he one of the new farmers you're working with?" Janelle asked Pat, hoping to sound nonchalant. "Oh, George? He does grow some delicious tomatoes," Pat remarked, her silver bangles chiming as she moved. "But he doesn't make a living off his garden. George, he's my healer." Pat continued adding items to a list as she reviewed the open cookbook on the counter. "You're a healer?" Janelle thought that sounded a little new agey. "Like your doctor?" Pat chuckled. "No, George works on my spirit body, not my physical body." Then she paused, although you'd be surprised how connected they are. Then Pat turned and squinted her hazel eyes slightly as if to really see Janelle, to understand why she was asking. She took a big breath in, then exhaled loudly and decisively said, "You should go see him, Janelle. I think it'd be really good for you. He's helped me a lot." She turned then and jotted something down on a piece of paper and handed it to Janelle. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Janelle does decide she wants to go see George the healer, and she's now in his waiting room. She began filling out the forms with her personal information. When she turned to the next page, there was a long list of items for potential improvements with a checkbox by each one. Some of them were what she would have expected, things like insomnia, worry, sadness, relationships. Others surprised her, items like prosperity, career leap, and vague things like spark. There were items she had never even thought to want more of, such as levity and whimsy. Scanning over the list, she couldn't find a box for the stabbing pain behind her shoulder blade. Working through the form, she first checked off a few items that felt safe. Then she scanned the list again, thinking, what's the harm in checking a box? Why not? She checked a few more items. She made a mental note to ask him about the back pain. Janelle sat across from George in a comfortable room. He sat in an armchair within reach of his desk where his cane rested. It was hard to tell his age or why the cane was needed, if he had an injury. George removed Janelle's paperwork from the clipboard, glanced over it, raised his eyebrows slightly, and then set it aside. He took a notebook and pencil from his desk. Now, Janelle, tell me in your own words, why are you here? Janelle began to speak, nervously sharing the goals she had checked off on the paperwork and trying to explain why she checked each one. She hesitated, but George patiently gazed at her. She sensed the slightest smile behind his calm face. He wore ordinary clothes that looked well used. Something about his calm demeanor made her nervousness increase even more until she was stumbling over her words, trying to explain why she was there, when she herself didn't even know. George put one hand up, signaling her to quiet. "Can I stop you there?" he asked. Janelle stopped talking. "Do you want to start again?" George asked. Janelle nodded and slowly began again. "I saw you come into the store last week," she explained. "I watched you talking to Pat. I don't know what you were saying. I wasn't eavesdropping, but there was something about it. You and Pat were laughing. I don't know, it seemed good, and I was curious. And I know Pat said you work on the spirit body, but I'm here because, honestly, I'm here because my back just really hurts, like all the time. But I know you're going to tell me to go to the doctor. Really, I'm sorry to have wasted your time," she said as she stood up and began to gather her sweatshirt and bag from the couch. George chuckled, but in a gentle way that let Janelle know he wasn't laughing at her. "Yes, laughter is good for us. It's good for the body and the spirit. Your back pain is a good place to start. I think I can help you, but I do need to tell you that my methods are a little bit different. Do you want to learn more?" Janelle sat back down. All right, the next two poems are somewhat more recent and from a series of after a big thing happens. So this one is After the Move. I remember your mother's dry skin under my fingers that long hospice year, and rose lotion and the flash of your hazel eyes demanding care. We wrapped her in soft cotton swaddling, our elder growing smaller, her body wordless and beyond control. Her blue eyes followed our movements, turn, adjust, turn, adjust. Each day we tended her fragile skin. Each day revealed her sharpening hip bones. Each day we unwrapped the gangrenous toe, fearing the spread of dead cells. Each day asking, what will cease next? That fall, we buried your mother on her birthday. Still, I see her white pixie cut flattened after rest when you wake. Her arched eyebrows raise above your eyes. Her jaw clenches in your silence. Why can't I see you, my beloved, anymore? She is everywhere now that we've left her house empty. After the separation. When the first raspberries of the season ripen, I clean the canes easily, gently dropping the perfect fruit in a bowl, leaving only gleaming white stems. Later, summer brings worry of flies and beetles. Everything is overgrown. Soft, overripe fruit may be home to larvae. Before I knew this, I served my family juicy, overripe raspberry topping on ice cream. The dark red mash didn't move at first. Then flecks of white seeds writhing. Inspect the inside of each berry. If you see a single droplet of juice, look for the just hatched larva raising its head to the light, reaching this way and that. Picking becomes a chore, a favor to the bush, deliberate and painstaking, requiring good light, straining middle-aged eyes. Focus on what you do want, friends advised me one summer evening after a barbecue. I do want exquisite summer-bearing fruit. Is there another way? A way to exist without the fruit flies and beetles, without the eggs and larvae, without these creatures feeding their own hunger, fulfilling their life's purpose? Part of you can hold the fear. Part of you knows if there's no sign of damage, then you're safe. The raspberry is untouched, whole, and some pleasure remains. All right, I'm gonna read two more poems. And these last two are both older poems, and they're inspired by dreams. At the poet's house. One poet suggests I heighten the artifice in my poems. Another poet wants me to write more uppity titles. At the poet's house, I spent the night, and in the morning shampooed with his poems. Whole words lathered, breaking into a residue of individual letters that swirled down the drain. He didn't seem to mind. It didn't bother him either when I decided I'd take my favorite ones home. It wasn't until later when I sent them off to be published and couldn't quite figure out what to do with that other poet's name at the bottom of every page that I sensed a conflict. I want to cruise. The future is a night river, weedy under overhang of trees, a current that never ceases to pull this canoe, whether upstream or down. None of the proper tools are at my disposal, yet I steer. From the beginning, I know my companion will disembark silently, wait at the junction for a car to pick her up. No, I'll be left with no one to holler instructions and have to climb myself into the stern. The current still carries the boat, whichever direction would be safe for travel. Thank you.
I really wanted to know George's methods. Sad that we didn't get together. That was awesome. Thank you so much. All right, and our next reader is Grace Zander. Grace Zander is a senior majoring in writing and applied arts and is currently a project manager with the Teaching Press. She enjoys writing in all genres, but has recently discovered a love for poetry. Writing about nature is her favorite topic, and she is attempting to write a chapbook exploring the subject. She hopes to one day have a career in publishing. Please welcome Grace Zander.
Thank you. I'm going to be reading a series of poems from a chapbook that I've been writing. It's called As the World Dreams, the chapbook, of course. So they all have something to do with nature. They all have to do with hopes and dreams. So, all right. Tree hugger. Stand tall, taller. Your wounds may leak. Don't let them see you shake. Take the power, stretch out your arms, dance as you die. They'll try to pull you down, pierce your heart. Know that it isn't the end. You'll be reborn. Your strength has shifted. The weight of 1,000 storms changes. Now you bear a mother, a child. Your anger for being torn down is now hope for the child's life. Happiness. How strange these creatures who sit in the sun, smile like they're happy, complain like they're not. They seem to think their purpose is to dream. How can this be? Food falls from their mouths, the crumbs feed a whole colony. That's a purpose. I live to serve, to gather, to protect. I don't dream. Dreams lead to discontent, to wishing for more. There is no more, not in the life of an ant. This next poem I wrote during a bit of a not so good time, so it's about depression. Alive. I'm envious of evergreens. Year-round they stand, proud and tall, and eternally green, alive. My green only shows in good weather, when I'm coated in warmth, shrouded in light. A hint of cold and darkness I shed and shed until I'm withered and dull. Deep down, I know this is normal. There are others like me who hide from the elements, seek to destroy. But it still hurts to lose my color that makes me me. A mother's grief. I saw a dove in mourning. It perched above my head, sang its weary call, projected out its sorrows into the ears of all. With muted colors donned, it hung its head, cried. On the ground below, a cracked egg, its young had died. No other bird came near, they had no words to give. It was just me holding vigil for the pain this mother felt. As the day went on, its lament only grew. I reached out to comfort this poor distraught dove, but stopped halfway through. In its eyes, I saw myself, grieving both our losses. No words I could say, no comforts I could give, would stitch her egg back up, breathe life back into my child. All I can offer is silence as the mother dove mourns. Starved. I sit open-mouthed at my mother's feet, begging her to notice me, to feed me with her love. My siblings soak up her attention. They are bigger, stronger, better than me. But I am louder. She'll have to notice me, eventually. Starved of affection, frail with anxiety, I'm kicked from the nest. My only cushion is her disappointment. At least now she looks my way, if only to curse my existence. And then the last poem I want to read is a poem that I wrote. I've been learning a lot about climate change in one of my classes, so this is a poem about that. I dream, it's called The Dream of Death. I dream I'm the sun, shining down on creation, giving them life, watching them thrive. I dream I'm the ocean, engulfing the world, offering mystery, watching them explore. I dream I'm the trees, growing tall around the globe, giving them breath, cooling their brows. I dream I'm the soil, blanketing the earth, offering food, softening their footsteps. I dream I'm myself, taking these gifts my home provides and twisting them, turning them lethal. I dream of life and death, but the world kept turning and dying, even when I wake. Thank you.
All right, nice job, everybody. Okay, we have reached the Q&A portion, so we'd love to hear questions from the audience. You can ask questions to one reader in particular or to everyone, totally open. Yes. Sure. Do you want to start us off?
Camilla, does the name Burial Goods mean anything to you? Just that your poem Swan Song reminded me of a video from them on YouTube, so I figured I'd ask.
Great, thank you. Who wants to go next? Who's got a question for our panel? Paul, thanks. I'll come back to you.
You can raise your hand.
Judy?
First of all, thanks to all the readers, lovely work, and a real privilege to be able to share it with you. I'm wondering, we had at least 4 of us that are working in worlds beyond our world, or the way we understand our world. And I was wondering if the panel could speak at all to the process of defamiliarization and then refamiliarization into these fantastical science fiction sort of worlds. So how do you achieve this? How do you make a believable world out of something that we are not familiar with?
I didn't work in sci-fi, but I did work in the world of myth. And the great thing about the world of myth is that a lot of the work is already done for me. I guess from the work I've done, I've had to go back and try and place myself in the world that the ancient people of Greece wanted, or like viewed the world, and what their values were and how that reflected their beliefs. And then the other great thing about myth is that there's a lot of answers that we do know, at least we quote unquote do know, a lot of ideas that we know that they had, and there's a bunch of gaps in those ideas. So writing mythology gives me freedom to fill in those gaps. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a great question. I don't, my story does have magic in it, but I don't think I really did create a different world. And I mean, I think what I tried to do was just have the magic kind of have an impact on the characters that was noticeable, but also like I kind of wanted to be a doubt, like, is it actually real? You know, the whole story is very realistic, but it has the kind of fantastical element. So I wanted there to be some doubt as to, is it something that could potentially happen just in our world, or is there the magical element that's influencing it? And then finally in the end, I made it more clear that that was coming through, but I guess I don't know. That's my answer. Does anyone else want to speak to that?
Is that it? From you all? Okay. What other questions do we have out here?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hi, so I guess just out of curiosity, not a question about your writing techniques or anything, just curious how each of you feel, because I consider myself to be just kind of I creative write as like a hobby. So I'm wondering, for each of you, how do you feel you approach like world building on a macro or a micro scale? Like what kind of world building when you make your own stories? Do you feel like it's more important to take it from like a more literal sense or more figurative sense? Are you creating things like from imagination and then giving the purpose, or are you going with the more, established kind of routes? That's my curiosity.
So that is a great question. I would just like to say that like a lot of what I write is inspired by a lot of different media, but I also throw in my own elements. So I think on like a world building thing, I always start with like the really huge overarching stuff and then slowly work my way down to the nitty gritty.
Yeah, for me, a lot of my work, I tend to start with like a message I want the audience to like take away from it, or multiple messages. I like stuff that's like able to be interpreted. I found recently I don't do much like in-depth world building with a lot of my stuff, but when I do, I try to incorporate it into that overall message I'm doing, and it's very character focused as well.
An approach that I've been taking recently that I found very effective was finding a theme to speak about. So for example, maybe you want to speak about a theme of revenge. And then you don't want to just stick with a theme, you might want to cover some vantage points to talk about said theme with. So maybe I want to talk about how revenge is unsatisfying or dirty or gross. So then with those vantage points and that theme picked out, there's several ways I can go with it. One of my first thoughts would be, let's put it into a city with a seedy underbelly where people do terrible things to one another and other people go out for vendettas. That's just kind of my approach to it.
I don't write fiction very often, but I think with this story, I just focused on settings that were like key settings that were going to be important to the characters, and kind of went from there.
I kind of do the same thing Camilla does, and I have an idea that I want my audience to get from it, and then I build up from there. I'm writing fiction for a different class right now, and I find that I often develop the characters first, and then I develop the world around them, which helps me because a lot of my stories are more character-driven than plot-driven.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, nice work. What other questions do we have out here? Chloe.
This is for everyone. What is one piece of writing advice that you live by?
I don't remember who said this, but one rule that I will always live by is to break any like quote unquote rule of writing before you say anything that is just outright barbarous.
Mine is always that no one is going to tell the story the way you are going to. So you might have like very similar stories to someone, but no one's going to have the same voice as you.
I learned this from that man over there,
Yeah.
Dr. Paul Ballinger, but every word should have two purposes.
Mine is just to write.
Advice that I was given, I don't know by who, is to like take a break, because sometimes you're staring at your piece for too long and then you realize that you start hating it in your mind. But if you step back for a few days, maybe work on something else and come back to it, it gives it new life and you're able to see what makes it work.
Excellent, those are great. Other questions out here from the audience? Y'all are making me remember, right?
That's why I waited.
Expect nothing less.
So, to you graduating seniors, I've had the pleasure of working with you in some capacity, but I've never had the pleasure of witnessing your gifts like I have tonight, okay? So I'm kind of curious because I've seen some go start here and now come to close to the end. And this is my roundabout way of asking, when you develop this voice, this creative voice, what surprised you?
That is a really good question. I think when I write and I read it back, what I'm most surprised about is sort of how sophisticated it comes out, because in my brain it's very chaotic and does not make sense. And sometimes even like how dark it becomes in my works, because I don't try to do that, but I feel like as writers, especially nowadays, we get very influenced by stuff going on around us, and I feel like that's reflected within my art as well. So, yeah.
I think what really surprised me, I remember in freshman year, I feel like I'd have to really kind of explain before I can move. And now I'm very surprised with just how much information I can get across while moving, so that we don't get hung up on strange details or just ordinary details. So, yeah.
I think what's really surprised me is how honest I've become in my work. When I first started out here, it was almost like I was trying to hide parts of myself in my writing. But now through different workshops and through amazing professors, I really learned how to just like let what I want to go onto the page, and to learn to just accept that I won't always like get like roars feedback, and I have to be open to being critiqued. Yeah.
I have a question. I was wondering if each of you could talk about one artist that you feel like has really inspired you or influenced your work in some way, and talk a little bit about that. You can take artist very broadly. So it could be a writer, it could be a musician, a literal painter, or something like that. Just love to hear from each of you someone that you feel like has resonated with you.
So one person that has been a huge influence on my writing style has been Cassandra Clare, the author of the whole Shadowhunters series, The Mortal Instruments and all that. Just the style of her writing and like the interactions between her characters are just immaculate. And I every day shoot for that level of greatness.
I would say probably Margaret Atwood. I have been reading her works probably way too young than I had to be. My mom raised me as a little feminist, so there we go. But like Handmaid's Tale really was like a turning point for me. I really like the, the speculative and the dystopian. I just love the way she builds up the world around it and how it's all still very rooted within reality. So yeah.
I used to be really resistant to research because research is sloppy, and for some reason I really wanted my writing to be neat. But you know, when you're resistant to something, you just need someone to really convince you to not be resistant to that. And that person is right over there. Her name's Anita, and she's my girlfriend. And I would not have gotten anywhere near mythology if it weren't for her influence and her diving first into research and dragging me with. So, yeah.
Hyperfixation.
So with that question, I want to say my first poetry professor when I went to grad school, Susan Fear, a Milwaukee poet who passed away recently. And as after receiving the news that she had died, I was rereading her poems, and I wouldn't have even realized how much of an influence her poetry had on my writing until I could see it from the vantage of a lot of distance. And so, so I also just advise you to take notes when you have fun prompts that are based on other people's poems. And so you remember that in the future, because I probably didn't always do that. But that's a great question. Thank you.
An artist who inspired me is a musician called Rabbitology. She creates these songs that are kind of horror-ish, but they all have to do with nature and southern. I really enjoy her music, and her the way she weaves her lyrics together is really inspired me to keep going with my writing.
That was great, thank you. All right, any other last questions before we wrap up? Thanks everybody for those really thoughtful questions. Panelists, do you have any final words for us before we end the event? Is there anything else you really burning want to tell us?
Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being here. And big thanks to Dr. Bellinger for all his wonderful influence on helping us all.
Well, in the spirit of giving thanks, thank you, Dr. B, and thank you, Brady, for looking over my work so I can present it here. And thanks to the rest of you for being here and listening to it.
All right, let's give it up one more time for our awesome panel. And I'll just say too, if any of you have not read For Working Title yet but are interested, please reach out to me or Dr. Williams. We'd be happy to have you as a panelist. Thanks everybody for coming. It's great to have you all here. Thanks panelists, y'all were amazing. Yay!